brothers and sisters, we are not called to be lonely. We are not called to go through life alone. We are blessed to be called to share in communion with God and with each other. And as human beings, we need to know that we are loved, and we need to love one another in return, to love God in return for all that He gives us. We need to know what it is to be included and to share with others deeply. I'm sure we've all experienced loneliness in some form or another, and we know that that's not what we're called to. We're not called to remain there, to feel empty inside. So how do we escape this? How do we share life with others, share life with God, experience God? One of the primary ways is through the family. In the first reading from Genesis today, God creates the man and woman for each other and establishes them in union together. In the gospel today, Jesus speaks strongly against divorce. And one of the things we are certain of is how strongly Jesus condemned this action. But the question is why? Why did Jesus condemn divorce? It's not to be hard against people or to make people feel bad about themselves, but because God looks at the family as such a beautiful creation. It all goes back to the Genesis passage and God's desire for marriage from the very beginning. It is because of the sacredness and blessedness that God sees in marriage and in the family, and because Jesus sees marriage as imaging His own relationship to the church. And we all know that the church is viewed as Jesus' bride. All of us make up the church, and the fact of the matter is Christ looked on His people with such a deep love that He gave His life for the church in His life and in His death. He was so totally dedicated to serving the church that His life can be seen in reference to the church and what the church will go on to become in all of us. So when we say that marriage models Christ's love for the church, what we mean is that the man and the woman enter into a relationship of mutual love in which they both live for the building up of each other and the sacrificial love for one another. It's not just a contract or a way of power over another, but of being totally for the other and putting their needs over the simple needs of the self. The couple also does this when they are blessed with children, who they commit to raising up so that they can have a flourishing life in their service to the church and greater community that they serve and become a part of. But of course, all of us are not called to marriage. Some are called to priesthood or religious life. Some called to the consecrated life. And others are still discerning where God might be calling them. But these two are not called simply to be alone. Rather, they give themselves for the larger family of the church. And so priests, for example, live their life serving the people of the parish or their ministry, celebrating the sacraments, meeting people for spiritual direction, and so on. And religious brothers and sisters live in community, sharing with their fellow brothers and sisters by how they live. And those of us in the world, the laity, by how we volunteer, serve in the community, serve our families. And of course, the one relationship every person is called to: communion with God. Every single one of us here, every person ever created, no matter our vocation, has been called to this daily encounter with the Lord. God is always with us and always available to us. And because of this, the reality is that we need to never remain in loneliness. He's always present to us, even when we are alone. So what does this look like to get out of this loneliness and live in communion, to live in community and share? In the context of marriage, I think it's taking time away to be with one another, perhaps taking couples retreat, or taking a weekly family day to be with your spouse and children to build up the bonds in the family. Or for those not married, find a group to help serve with. Volunteer at a homeless shelter. Find a hobby that you can do with others. Meet up with a friend or somebody you haven't seen in a while for a meal. And for all of us, make time each day for God. Take 10 minutes in the morning just to sit in God's presence. Take a few minutes each night to reflect on your day with God. God made us for communion both with each other and to be with Him. Don't live your life alone in isolation. Allow yourselves to share in relationship with God, with your families, and with this church community. Let us all live for God and for each other.